Hello and welcome to 52 Weeks. This week we're going to continue the discussion of Chapter 5, Housing, and in this chapter I've split it up into 6 segments to make it a little bit easier to digest. That was looking at the introduction, number 2, the building typology, number 3, building statistics, number 4, issues in housing, number 5, observations, and number 6, building blocks of Harrisburg. In this segment we're going to be zeroing in on more of the building statistics, specifically in real estate. The thing to look at here in this diagram is this graphic shows representation of owner-occupied units, and it lists the actually housing sale value. So you can see the breakdown in the number of units. What is fascinating, you see that almost 60% of owner-occupied residential units are under $100,000. So the real estate element in this housing section is looking at the cost and the valuation of our building and housing stock, residential. So this next table shows the real estate sales and the population in comparison. I arrived in 2005, so you can look at it as 655 real estate sales. And you can see where there's been fluctuations and reductions that have happened over the years. And as the comp plan states, Harrisburg currently has a soft buyer's market. There are good values to be found on homes that are still available, as the number of homes listed for sale is greater than the number of homes being sold. So here's some updated information from Trulia's website, looking at median sales price and price per square foot. In the 2015 numbers, you can look at the median sale price was $158,000 based on 223 home sales at $85 a square foot, which is down from 2014 price per square foot. And in 2019, it was $168,000 based on 482 home sales. So that's $106 a square foot, is up 5% from 2018. So there has been growth in this, and you can see that as you look at the excitement that has been around Harrisburg and seeing what is kind of this upswing, and we'll talk about that later. Here's some more graphs that I pulled in. Again, Trulia's website has some really good data to look at the 1-bedroom, the 2-bedroom, the 3-bedroom, the 4-bedroom properties. I just put them in here because there's more data. I just want to let the residents know that there are places to go to do this analysis or look at just where things are going price-wise. This is something that realtors are looking at. Yeah, these tools are out there. There's free versions and then there's paid versions that professionals use and get access to. One of the things we're trying to leverage within this discussion of 52 weeks is trying to get the tools that are free so that residents can begin to do these same questions and actually look at things in a different narrative of what's actually happening in our community. So in this, look at this map, this image, there's in Harrisburg City, you can see 909 homes are found in this property. You're just looking at the total homes currently for sale. I think this is right at August, right in 2019. So looking back to 2014 and 15, when the comp plan was first drafted, it's looking at 1661 resale new homes, 31 open houses, 397 homes in the foreclosure process, and 7% of those homes with mortgages. We look at the median sales price in Harrisburg from 2000, which was $56,000 to 2014 is $87,900. So it's increased almost 40%. We look at the increase of value of the homes that are around the city. The question is how this increase happens, and we'll talk about appreciation, but the goal is to see how that doesn't drastically change, that there's an even progression on this, or becomes this too much excitement in the valuation becoming like, and we'd get back to the bubble of 2008, and some people are already looking at that as we're still in this. Nothing has really changed. If you've seen the movie The Big Short, any of the regulations in there haven't really changed much, or the practices. This is something that as the city becomes the key focus over the next decade, this is one thing that is a little disturbing, is to see how you look and mitigate this change that happens. And part of that's through just understanding policy and how this works, so we don't make some of the mistakes that other places are seeing with housing costs and actually trying to find sustainable living when we look at wages and actually house and home ownership. In this focus of the median housing value of $87,900, in the context of the entire state, the median housing value is $163,800. The average listing price was $191,000, and the average selling price $158,000. So these are just some numbers that the comp plan was pulling in to figure out where things were back in 2015. Things have changed in 4 years, but these are the costs that we're looking at. So this is instructive that the median sales price in the city is $158,000, while the median house value is at $87,000. So another 2 quotes from the comp plan. Bellevue Park and Academy Manor in Harrisburg represent the city's two consistently healthy housing markets for home sales. Using replacement value comparison, sales prices of properties in Academy Manor and Midtown remain many times below their building replacement value. Rather, prices are established by comparative properties, that is, houses of similar size throughout the region, regardless of initial construction quality. So herein lies the problem of comparables. If we use the replacement value comparison, this is a better numbers to understand where the value of the house is versus something that's stick-built and new out in the suburbs. Using the replacement value comparison, sales prices at properties in Bellevue, Academy Manor, and Midtown remain many times below their building replacement value. We get this because this is the embodied value of houses and the structures that were built, and they're many times below their replacement value. We could not rebuild many of the houses in Harrisburg the way we did back when they were first built because the costs are extraordinarily high. We all recognize that. Part of the problem is trying to figure out how do we set up a system that builds and rebuilds and values what's currently there. Rather than using the replacement value comparison understanding, the prices are established by comparable properties, that is, houses of similar size throughout the region. So it's always a similar size, regardless of the initial construction quality. So you're getting houses that are old into a market around the entire central PA that just doesn't look the same. And so this is where this imbalance is something that's been really studied, particularly in cities that have been distressed for a long time. This is something that we need to know in our communities of how we regard these buildings and reinvest into them. So when we go and replace a property that we look at it, oh, this is old, and we tear it down and we rebuild new, that new can never replace that same quality. So this is happening throughout all types of cities throughout the nation. And that's a really tough thing. In West Philly, just driving through that the other day, seeing new housing coming up, and its construction quality is far less than what's next to it. So finding ways to invest in this without overburdening the process is tricky. It's not easy. We're looking at ways that how this can happen. Another quote from the comp plan: Midtown recovered from urban renewal actions through waves of concerted reinvestment in the 1970s and again in the beginning of 1984. There's even been more recent development happening in the 2005 through 2008. It contains both the highest income census tract in the city and increasing house value when you look at this data. So this is what's happening as I see and look at neighbors who can't afford to live here anymore. This is what's disturbing. This should be reconciled, and we should have this discussion and continuing discussion in neighborhood groups so that we can look at ways to be a watchdog of it, and then also continue to push into the legislative process at city council to say, here's the policy that we'd like to see, or at least research and be data driven. We know this is happening. I'd hate to see the same thing that's happening in Midtown happening all at other neighborhoods. And when I say that, I mean the change that's happening that is unregulated in a sense, that who is going to be able to afford some of these houses. So this is going to be the next decade of transition in Harrisburg. And if it's not laid out now, if we don't have a strategic plan for it, it's not going to change. This is what I don't understand with the resistance of the Harrisburg Comprehensive Plan. Midtown continues to contain empty parcels and examples of distressed property, showing that the improvements in the area to date have not been strong enough for market forces to engage in widespread normalization of undervalued properties. Development in this area continues to depend on substantial subsidies for viability. And that's really the crux of this, is that, so how are we actually starting to do reinvestment? And we continue to look for the subsidies that push this. And I think that's where we have to be asking the question, what are the many options to reinvest into our neighborhoods, and not just a subsidy-driven process? The conclusion of housing property analysis is that the assessed value properties are selling. The higher the value, the more likely the property is likely to be seen as an appreciating asset, the more likely to sell. That's the asset value ideas here in driving some of the real estate in Harrisburg and Central PA. So the question then is, as this appreciates, who continues to own and qualify? And looking at the comp plan, so the individuals who have the incomes or assets that allow them the ability to pay for a $158,000 home or borrow at that amount. And so this is what's really interesting to watch and see, is understand the connection between wages and also home ownership and the home buying. So this is something that we should be reconciling in our city. So who's left out in the process? Lender, mortgage, insurance. Residents occupy most of the city's housing stock. They cannot readily qualify for a mortgage. So even even more critical and unresolved. The lower income individuals who desire home ownership face the cost of ongoing property maintenance. So even if you get into a house, these houses do take a lot of maintenance. And that is one thing that we're not even serious about, because if we were, we would have been able to find a way to have an internal structure to take care of this. This would have been something that we would have built in as education and continual look at community growth and support. So we know and recognize that the system's imbalanced, quote, habit of measuring community condition by housing sales and housing value ignores the important components of the triple bottom line. I've talked about this before, and it's in the comp plan, the valuation of social, environmental, and financial benefit. So we've got to see them as connected. If we continue to just look from an economic point of view and return on investment, the housing sales and housing value, that puts everybody else aside, because all you can say now is say, oh, I want to make the most of my money. I have a right to go and make the most by investing in here, or I'm not going to invest in this place because I'm not going to get my return on investment. Well, what does that say about the social and environmental impacts in our community and even economic growth? When we look at disinvestment, people aren't seeing that just doing this single moment of this economic development doesn't understand and doesn't even evaluate the social and environmental impacts. So we've got to really get our act together, even from this small city, and look at this triple bottom line. I've not met a developer yet who is thinking in triple bottom line. It is only return on investment with economic benefit. So that is a huge, huge problem. All right. And what's happening is we bring in outside folks that have that same mindset to extract even more wealth out of our community without even recognizing the social environmental connections that are already here. They want to use that because they can come in and do the live, work, play and have fun and enjoy all this stuff, but aren't looking at the overall impacts with the community that's already here, or residents that are long-term residents, and those who can't afford houses or can't play in this sandbox, can't afford this. So they're continuing to be pushed out. This isn't unique to Harrisburg. This is happening all over the nation. We start to look at these. If you look at reading the articles, and I'm trying to stay up current with the articles that I have posted in this feed, these are key issues. And if we're not getting it, something's wrong. And I really believe we just need to have this in our education system so we see what the system itself is doing to our own local economy as well as national economy. Returning back to the collective impact and chaotic system graphic, this is really imbalanced and interconnected. There's some relationships that are being built in that Venn diagram, but we're certainly not near was understanding as a balanced that we treat everything or they have the value as the same. And I would even say that the people place are even more important than the economy. The idea is if you get the people in place working, that they're working together, that they're looking at housing and we're taking care of needs and we're taking care of education and we're taking care of the green spaces, the sustainability, the parks, the buildings, all of that, if we're thinking about that. And I know that takes money. That's the economy. But the thing is, that's not the number one thing. It's that the people are living in dignified means and they have a dignified quality of life that they live in. If we work on these two things, the other stuff will follow. So in the quote that's in the comp plan, in a sustainable market, houses and neighborhoods appreciate at a rate or maintain a high value adequately to justify reinvestment in maintenance and property improvement. That's what is necessary, where we have this appreciation that it stays constant and as a high value that we continue to reinvest. If we look at our buildings and see them through the lens of high value, we're going to want to reinvest. And we should do the same with our people. We look at our people that are here. We should already look at them as having the best connections that we have in our social capital. And we can do this. So if we put high value on this, it's only going to return fourfold. So the question is, why can't we change this thinking so that we can move in a different direction for the next decade? So the Harrisburg Comp Plan looks at recommendations in this area. It says the city should explore marketing policies that differentiate high quality building stock contained in the city, providing a system of bank recognized valuation that separates city dwellings from comparison to regional comparative buildings, promote houses as walkable, sustainable, well-appointed communities, and differentiating the city's housing stock from the post-World War II suburban house found in the surrounding communities. Say all this is that we don't want to, it's not necessarily marketing to the outside, it is, but I think we actually really need to see this from the inside, from our city residents, that we have something here, that Harrisburg is a jewel. And I think that's part of the, we get this movement of folks
folks moving in, the reason why they chose to move in here is that they see this value. And I think the tough thing is the residents that live here have seen so much disinvestment. So there's a lack of seeing that value. Trying to bring these two together and reduce that gap is very difficult. And that can only come from continued community discussions and neighborhood discussions where we're all talking about these things. We may not all agree on all these parts, but the thing is, we're looking at evaluating. If we look at it as people, place, and economics, we can find a place where we fit and try to promote those areas and strengthen those in terms of what the value is. Continuing recommendations in terms of policy, this requires the city to strengthen community commercial areas, serving walkable neighborhoods, and aggressive stabilization of existing housing stock. So these are really key core pieces that the city can say, okay, this is our goal. What are the steps and actions that need to happen? That alone needs to be connected back into community engagement. And if we don't have community engagement, this is not going to work. The city continues to do a top-down approach and thinking it knows what it's going to be. Doesn't do a good job marketing this stuff because they don't have the capacity to do it, or they don't have the expertise to do it. And the communication networks just aren't there. Nextdoor, Facebook, and all that are so fragmented and so polarizing that it's not helpful. So we need to get to somewhere there's a focus of crowdsourced placemaking and community placemaking and crowdfunding, is that we're taking it in stock from the masses and break from this typical traditional planning process that has a break in engagement. So planning in itself should have a high level of engagement. The thing is, we have no methodology or process in Harrisburg that does that well. So we should be inventing something that works, not expecting the old system to continue to work, because it's obviously failed. Past 14 years I've lived here, my family, even coming into Harrisburg earlier than that, it has not served well. So why do we continue to do the same thing, not try to invent something that works for all residents that live here? So thanks again for listening. We're going to continue in this week for 2 more segments. One is on appreciation and the other one is on real estate taxes. Thanks again and take care.